Soul recycling is a real thing, and not all beings have souls. Hello, my name is Michael Denny. I am an extraterrestrial contactee, and I also am somebody who communicates with higher dimensional extraterrestrial beings pretty much on a daily basis. And this has been going on since June of 2022 when I first did CE5 protocols, or also known as Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocols. So, if you've been following my channel and you find this statement to be totally out of character for me, that's because it is. So, while it's true that soul recycling is a real thing and that not all beings have souls, it is not what you have been told. And so I'm going to tell you the real story. What most people think of when they think of soul recycling is that it starts from the assumption that, number one, that we are victims, that we have been trapped in this earth simulation matrix by beings more powerful than ourselves, whether they be reptilian, or whether they're archons, whether they're lower forms of God or the devil or something like that. You're told don't go into the light when you die, because going into the light means that you're going to go back into reincarnation, and that there are beings that trick you into reincarnating, because when you're down here in this reincarnation cycle, they are feeding off of all of your emotions and your energy. So they use you like the Matrix, like a battery. That's what most people think. And that's the teaching. And that's why I haven't taught soul recycling, because what I just described is not what happens. It's a projection with a distorted conclusion based on partial truth. So what should I do first? I'll get into what soul recycling is, and then we'll see why the understanding of soul recycling is wrong. And the other thing that I said, which I haven't taught before, is that not all beings have souls. Now, I use my words very carefully. I didn't say not all humans. I said not all beings. All humans have souls. I don't care how evil they are. I'm sorry if that's a problem for you. But let's go on. So what happened the other day? So as I said, I'm a contactee of higher dimensional extraterrestrials. That was my doing. I reached out and did CE5, and they have been communicating with me ever since. And so they came to me yesterday, as they do almost on a daily basis. They come to me and talk to me, and I know that they're coming because I can feel their energy. Their energy is very intense. It's not very intense energy, so I know when they are what I call, I'm getting a text. They're texting me, which means that I can feel their energy and they're wanting to connect. And this happened yesterday. And the first thing that happened is a being showed up and said, because of the work that you've been doing. Now, when they talk about that, usually they're talking about these live guided interdimensional meditations that we do on our channel here every Wednesday and Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can come on here at those times, subscribe, hit the bell button if you want to be notified. That happens, again, twice a week. And if you can't make it for the live stream, not a problem. Just go hit the live tab on this YouTube channel, and you'll see hundreds of them. And just pick any one of them, and you can follow along in the meditations that we're doing. So a being shows up yesterday and says, as a result of the work that you're doing, meaning the meditations, we have really noticed you. And we want to let you know that you have been given the opportunity to go to a very high level. In fact, they basically made it sound like that you're going to go to a level of existence that not even the gods get to go to. It's an extremely high level. And you're going to get a very powerful gift. And so this happens to me on a daily basis. I get these kinds of messages all the time. And to be honest with you, I have just gotten used to it. And I just kind of go, oh, okay. What I've learned to do is when I have these interactions, I don't get all flipped out, and I just go, oh, that's interesting, and I go along with my day. I know that there's a difference between what happens down here in this third dimensional reality and what happens, out there on a higher dimensional level. And I've just gotten used to it. So that's what happened. Being said that, very grandiose, fantastical, unbelievable thing. And I said, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I went back to just doing my day and not thinking about it. But sure enough, I don't know how many hours later, I get another text. I feel a jolt of energy, and I know that there's some kind of higher dimensional being that would like to communicate with me. So I close my eyes and I put myself in a light meditative state, and I say, is anybody there? And what ends up happening when I do this, here's what happens. Here's the thing. This is absolutely a two-way street. So unlike what most channelers claim to happen, which is not, this is how I know that most channelers are either frauds or they're deluded or they're making things up or a combination of all that's how I know, is because communication with these beings is absolutely a two-way street. It is not something where I get possessed and taken over. It's nothing like that at all. It can be a very powerful, intense experience, but it's always a two-way street. And so my experience is that I'll get the text, the jolt, and I'll go, oh, somebody wants to talk. And I say, is anybody there? I'm here if you'd like to talk. And I have to actually make the invitation. And they usually kind of slowly come in, very respectful, and there's usually like this, hi, I'm here to talk. Do you have time? Can I talk with you? Very, very polite, very respectful. And so I have to actually participate. I say, yes, please, and energetically I open myself up to connect and communicate with them. And interestingly enough, the beings that are the most powerful are usually the ones that are the most gentle on the way in. So they don't show up like, God and thunderbolts. They're usually very polite and nice coming in, and that's how I know we're going to go somewhere. So I relax into it and I invite them in, and then the energy starts to build and I feel their power. So this was happening, and being says, I want to take you somewhere very special. Would you like to come with me? Again, there's no such thing as abducting anybody or taking anybody, against their will. I say, of course, I would like to do that. So I find myself going on this journey in my astral body, and I'm taken to some place the truth is my third dimensional brain really isn't able to process it. I know something is happening and maybe I might get some idea of it, but the truth is my brain really can't process what's happening. It's more of an energetic, and I know that my astral body is there, and I'm doing my best to try and understand what's happening. So I'm in some very, very high dimensional place. Feels like it's beyond everything. And I'm at the outskirts of this void. And there's this being there. And out of this void comes like this light, this ball of light. And this is a new soul that is coming into existence. And I'm told, as this is happening, I'm being told, souls are recycled. And of course, I hear that the way that people have been saying it. Now, I don't judge it. I log in and I go, I didn't think that's the way things worked. And the being went on to explain what happens is that there are higher levels of concentration. So there are souls that might be older than others, more advanced than others, but what happens is that, now bear in mind that souls, human souls, could actually be gods, deities, beings that have the ability to create entire universes, and they choose to come here. Again, this is why the teaching of soul recycling is nonsense, because it starts from the assumption that you're a victim. So I'm here to tell you that any belief that starts from you being a victim, where you don't have any choice in what's going on, you're tricked into being or doing something against your will, any belief like that, if it's true, it means that you're completely screwed. It means that there's no way out. Because if there are beings in higher dimensions that are doing this to you, trust me, in the third dimensional level, you have zero tools to overcome that. Zero. So that assumption is dead on arrival, because the universe would not function. It would cease to exist. If there really was a reality where you could be tricked by some being in a higher dimension to go and be energy that beings can consume without your permission, that would mean that the energy of the universe would collapse in on itself, because all the universe is consciousness. So the idea that consciousness can feed off of itself in that kind of predatory way doesn't work. Now, as I said earlier, most people, even people who have these beliefs, they are projecting a distorted understanding of a half-truth. So what's happened in the case of soul recycling, the belief, the false belief, is they've conflated two things that are actually true, and then they've projected onto it their own fears. Because the truth is, human beings, unless they have had some kind of spiritual awakening, the experience of being just in the third dimension is that you are a victim, that you are this tiny little being that is being used. You're at the very least a victim of circumstances, of old age, disease, people who are stronger than you, that have more money than you. That is the experience that we have. So nobody likes that experience, and it creates fear. So the fear gets internalized. And then what people do is they spiritualize it. Now, ironically, beliefs like soul recycling actually give people comfort, because it takes it out of their hands, it spiritualizes it so that it's beyond their control. And what it really does, here's why people truly believe this. They believe this because it takes away their responsibility. They don't have to work as hard. However, if you accept the reality that everything in your reality is your own creation, pleasant or otherwise, then you are completely responsible for your life. So that means you have to choose to create a better reality. It means you have to be willing to look at yourself and why you are choosing to create a horrible life. People come to me all the time when I tell them this, that you have the ability to create your reality, and people who don't want to hear that will say, what about those poor children in some third world country who were born without legs? Are you telling me that they chose to live like that? And then they say, why in the world would anybody do that? And my response is, I don't know. What are you asking me for? I was born with all of my limbs. I don't know why somebody would do that. Ask them. So the assumption, and of course they're really never talking about those poor kids in some third world country. Again, they're projecting. That's how they feel. They feel like some person with no legs, born without anything. That's their experience. They're full of guilt and self-pity. And so they can't say that, because you look at them and you can say, you've got all of your limbs, you have money, you have a car. So they can't talk about themselves, so they find something else to grab onto and use as an excuse, as though they spend time thinking about it, And I want to ask, how much money have you given to, charity to feed those poor legless children? Of course, they haven't spent any money because they're all wrapped up in themselves. Anyway, I'm off in the weeds. So, if you can accept the idea that you are responsible for your reality, then you have to then say, well, I have to change my reality. So that's not something people want to do because, as I said, they'd rather not take responsibility. So it's just much easier to create a villain that's doing that for them. Now, again, they're projecting a false half-truth, which is, it is true that in this third dimension is a video game. It is not reality. It is an illusion. And the illusion is that you're a victim. It was designed that way. It's a video game where you go in and learn how to take control of your reality, starting off from the experience of not having any control. That's the whole point of the game. So they got that part right. It isn't a soul prison where other people are controlling you. It is a programmed game that gives you the illusion of lack of control. But if you take responsibility and work a spiritual program in your life, then you start learning how to control it, and then pretty soon you are ideally creating your own reality, and now you've won the game. So there's half of it. They are living in what feels like a prison planet. And the other thing they're projecting is, if they can make it about something bigger than them, then again, they don't have to take responsibility. This is what religion is all about. So what this being showed me was that, yes, soul recycling does happen, but it's, if you take it and flip it on its head, you have soul recycling. So what happens is, beings that are actually gods choose to come into all kinds of different incarnations. As I understand it, Earth is the most difficult. So again, you're right. If you feel like this is more than you can handle, it might have been. Your soul might not have had the ability to make it on Earth. Of course, I don't believe that. I think everybody could make it. But for some souls, it's more challenging. Other souls, they've done this, and they've gotten a lot of credits in the video game, so they can start off at a better place. And those are the people that seem to grow faster and gain more power more quickly. They've done this game before, and so they know how to play it. At the very least, their intuition tells them how to play the game. So these gods come in here, they play this game, or they incarnate on some other planet. And they play whatever game those planets are, which are usually far easier. And after they've gone through all of these different video games, where they've been a human, they've been a god, they've been a creator of universes, they've been, things we can't even begin to imagine, just very, very powerful beings that, do all kinds of stuff. After they've gained a huge amount of experience and a huge amount of power, their spiritual inclination is then to go into the void. It's not about experience anymore or learning, it's about connecting. And so now they have all this power, and they can connect very deeply with consciousness. They go back to source, if you will. They go somewhere we can't even really comprehend. And then, from our perspective, they pretty much disappear. Their identity goes away, and they become just being, and they're not in a conscious state, they're in a super conscious state. They're beyond the idea of consciousness. And they travel through that for however long, time isn't really important. And then guess what? They come out the other side. And when they come out the other side of the void, they come out as what looks like these brand new baby souls. Except every time that they do this, they're more concentrated. So their consciousness is more concentrated than before. They may go back and do the same thing. They may go back and do Earth again or other planets. But what will happen is, these will be the people who show up, and they have a brighter energy about them. They can get through the video game of that incarnation more quickly. And they really get to learn on an even deeper level. They might choose to be one of those people that are born in a third world country with no legs and no this, because that level of intense experience is what will be exciting for that soul. Now, I know that sounds horrible. I know that the perception of the individual is they're in absolute horrific pain, but the truth is that every soul is in a state of bliss all the time and watching what's happening. And the best way to interact with any incarnation is to have a spiritual way of life so that you can revert back towards the soul understanding as opposed to, your false fictional character avatar, right? Anyway, so that's soul recycling. And apparently it happens and people or souls go through multiple rotations of this. And so anyway, this being told me some information about me and my soul rotations. And anyway, I won't bore you with that, but it was pretty intense to hear and believe, but it's, very intense concept. So soul recycling does happen, but it's not what you've been told. You flip that on its head and if somebody said, okay, create a movie about soul recycling, but it's a very empowering story. It's like that. So the other thing that I'm here to talk about today is that not all beings have souls. So that doesn't mean I believe in NPCs, which people mean that there are human beings that don't have souls. They are evil and they're just programs. Now I'm here to tell you that is people's experience. I've absolutely interacted with people that come across that way. They're called narcissists, and there's no shortage of narcissistic people in this world. People who don't have empathy and see you as an object and use you as an object and abuse you in all kinds of ways. That is a very real thing. And for all intents and purposes, narcissists, in terms of their behavior, it's as if they don't have a soul because they don't have empathy. They don't have any functioning empathy. Now, of course, nobody can be a narcissist without having gone through horrific trauma, even if that trauma is being neglected and not being loved. That is, and I've said this before, it has been proven for centuries that the fastest way to unalive an infant is to not hold the child or talk to the child. That child will become unalived long before it starves or freezes to death. And so when you're dealing with what appears to be an NPC human, this is somebody that was severely traumatized in some way, and that's why they don't have any empathy, because they're broken. They don't have any self-love, self-awareness, no identity. So that's a real thing. So what people are doing when they want to believe that there are human beings that don't have souls, again, what they want to do is they want to not take responsibility for their pain and their trauma. Because the way to heal from that is to actually have compassion for those that harm you. Now, you can't do that if you're not willing to go deep and do the work internally. So again, what we're seeing is a narcissistic projection. The truth is that the vast majority of people who believe in reptilians and believe in NPCs are either narcissists or severely codependent, which is a lower version of narcissism. And it means that their identity has been deleted, destroyed, devalued to such a point they don't have empathy. They don't have compassion for those that are so damaged that they end up doing harm to others. So unless you're able to actually have compassion and go, wow, I feel really sorry for that person that they had to live like that, then guess what? You are also acting like an NPC. So, as you can tell, while I do believe that not all beings have souls, actually that's not my belief, that's what I was told, I was shown. Humans are not in that category. But beings that are in that category, for instance, are demons. Demons are real. I know because I used to be an exorcist. I've seen somebody completely transform. They were possessed. They had a demon in them, and that demon came forward and it completely transformed that person. It was one of the strangest experiences I've ever had in my life. But that being had no power to harm me, zero. And even though that is a being, it is a spiritual being, what I was shown by this being who is teaching me about soul recycling was that these beings, right now we're talking about demons. Demons are like AI programs. They act as though they have consciousness. You know, I'm sure you've communicated with AI at this point. It's very hard not to live on this planet and not communicate with AI. And you know, I was booking some surf sessions. I'm going to go in December and go to Waco, Texas, and do some surfing at that surf pool. And the only way to get information was to talk to an AI bot. And it's interesting. It's like talking to a person, and you get the feeling that there's a conscious person. It understands what you're saying and can respond just like a person. But there's no consciousness there. It's a computer program. It's a very, very complicated computer program beyond my understanding that has the ability to not only look like it has consciousness, but to act like it has consciousness. It can understand and communicate with you. You know, we're back, I mean, this was way back when, you know, back in my day, you know, the Starship Enterprise, the computer could talk back to you. Now, you knew in that it was just a computer, but really what they were talking about was AI. That a computer could communicate with you and have conversations with you and understand you and make, you know, do all kinds of intense tasks and all of that. So these demons are actually like, of course, it's not a computer program, but they're a construction, and they can self-generate. And as I understand it, the way demons self-generate is when there's enough negative emotions that are created by actual souls in human bodies. When the human personality creates enough negative feelings, those feelings can get squished out into the third dimensional matrix, and they start forming their own AI interface. And they can take on whatever is programmed into them. So when I used to do exorcisms, it was not what you think. So when you know, because one of the things that I used to do is I would command the demon to tell me their name, because then you have power over them. That's the idea. And you would expect that the demons are going to say, my name is Beelzebub, I'm the Lord of the dark realm of the, you know, like you're dealing with an actual person. But what would come out would be emotions. It'd say, tell me your name, and the name would be sadness, it would be self-pity, it would be anger, it would be judgment, you know, all the negative emotions. And so, you know, that's what demons are. They're simply negative emotions that have had enough energy put in them that they self-generate into these AI programs that float around. Now, again, when it comes to being possessed or damaged by a demon, that can only happen if you ask for it. So people who are possessed have at the very least unconsciously asked for a demon to come and torture them. Why would somebody do that, you ask? Because their actual emotional, psychological pain is far worse. And so they want something to come along and distract them. Now this is a very extreme example. Average people with intense emotional things, don't actually do that. These are people who are severely emotionally damaged. In fact, every person that I did an exorcism on who was legitimately possessed was either physically, sexually, or psychologically abused. And so we're talking about extremes. But people can have all kinds of experiences with them, but you have to have some wound within you that reaches out to them. So what I was shown, long story short, is that these programs act like a barrier. And this I found very interesting. And the way that it was explained to me was that souls like to explore. So if you put a soul into the third dimensional matrix, it's made up of yin and yang, positive and negative. And so there are places that need to exist in order to keep the energy moving that are very toxic to souls. It would be like, for instance, really, like a really swampy area with a lot of bugs and mud and bacteria. Now, if you spend time in there, walking around in there, you're going to get sick. It's toxic to you. But the earth needs it. The earth needs that. The earth needs our excrement and other things to then process that and create other plants. And so the earth enjoys things that we perceive as toxic. So the same thing with the universe. There are places within the matrix of this universe that use these toxic energies to create more energy. Who knows? Maybe that's what dark matter is. I don't know. But these demons act as like peripheral security guards. And the way it works is if your soul starts going down one of these really negative paths that becomes toxic, if it gets to a point where it's really a toxic place for that soul to be, there's going to be these negative beings there that are going to interact with you in a very negative way. And at some point, your soul is going to go, I don't want this, and it's going to find a way out. And so you'll find some healing and some self-awareness. So that was very interesting. NPCs do exist, but they're not human souls. They're something else. There are these sort of robotic beings, energetic beings that have consciousness but don't have a soul. They don't have true soul consciousness. And souls are recycled. And each time you go through one of these, I don't know how many trillions of years a soul gets, a god gets recycled. But every time you do it, when you go through it, you become more concentrated and more intense. And you may find out that you are one of these super concentrated souls. You don't experience it, you just experience normal life like everybody else. But the person next to you might only have been one or two times around this whole thing. Each time you go through it, you get deeper and more powerful. And it's those beings we can call star seeds. These are the beings who are going to be called upon in the new world to take on leadership roles. So we teach that kind of stuff here. We teach the Maoshan spirit practices, which you can find here at thunderwizard.com. If you click on shop, you scroll to the bottom, you'll see Summoning the Immortals. I recommend that if you're brand new to it. The one next to it, Celestial Qigong, that's also very powerful. This is going to help you tap into a higher frequency. And it is my belief that people who are called to these energy practices are going to very likely be what we would look at as being archangels or protector angels, guardian angels to protect against negativity. We also have maoshan.thunderwizard.com. You can go and learn those practices, and you can also go to thunderwizard.com and click on memberships, and you can subscribe to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. There's so many videos and practices on there, I couldn't even begin to list them all. So I hope you check those out, and later on tonight we are going to have a live guided interdimensional meditation. I hope you can make that. And whatever it is you decide to do, my friends, thank you for spending the time. This is one of my latest experiences in the astral realm, and as always, I share with you guys what I learn. I'm interested to hear in the comments any experiences that you've had in interdimensional meditation. Have you been told any crazy off-the-wall stuff that you didn't know existed before? Put it in the comments section. If you have questions about anything that I practice or anything I can do to help you, put it in the comments section. I read every single comment that people leave. That said, my friends, I love you all. Please be very good to yourselves, and I shall see you all very soon.